Uncle Captain, so he was using both hands there. Somebody slipped the other puppet on his hand probably. Stan Freberg was doing Cecil. The turkey was played by I don't know who. If you looked very carefully, you would have seen the top of Stan Freberg's head in a couple of shots there because they had a problem. Stan was much taller than Dawes. Dawes was a very short man. So they got Dawes these Frankenstein-type boots that added about 8 inches to his height, and he was just terrified all the time he was working to fall off his shoes. But they had to keep, and Stan Freberg used to claim that he was round-shouldered after he left the job from crouching all the time. But they did this show every day, 5 days a week, live, with obviously not enough rehearsal at times. And it was, how could you not watch this show? It's mesmerizing to watch this thing. These characters became very beloved, and one of my early memories is of going to a chain of Beany and Cecil restaurants around California. And I remember very vividly my parents taking me to this restaurant, and the main building had a huge Beany copter on the top of it, and a giant Cecil coming out of a box like a Jack-in-the-Box type situation. And they were on Bell brand potato chips, and it was just a very popular character. Scott, do you have any memories of the puppet show at all?
Well, the thing I want to comment on this, even though it was crude, I think it was sophisticated in some way. The use of the what do they call cyclorama behind it, and having it hook up. Apparently that turkey must have had wires to the ground. I don't understand. They must have had some food right off camera, because I can't understand when he ever turned around to look at the stuff. The fact that he's completely oblivious to it, he's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something standing there. But that's the main thing about this. I do remember the show, but I was really little. But the thing was, Bob and I had something in common. We both really loved dinosaurs. He did lots of dinosaur cartoons. And to me, looking at that now, because I didn't know who Cecil was, but looking at that, it occurs to me, when I first saw the show, I thought he was a dinosaur. And he may be the first dinosaur I ever saw. Because the arm up, in the cartoon, it's always, kind of moving around within limited animation. But there, he looks like a brontosaurus, really.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a very popular show, and I kind of have an envy for the people who were Bob Clampett's kids, who were in that environment, who got to, be on the. What is your earliest memory of this?
Well, it's not time for Beany because we weren't born yet, but certainly the comic or the cartoon show was a big part of our lives. Yeah. And Mom, worked side by side with Dad their whole marriage, and she helped produce the show. She helped write songs for the show. She did voice characters. Rob did voices, and Dad created Beany's girlfriend as Baby Ruthie, which I'm very proud of. And I was too young. I wasn't even speaking yet, so I was too young to do voices. But they got my giggles on the voice track. And he had artists come to our house, and there's 10 Foot Tall and Wet, one of the Beany and Cecil cartoon episodes. He had them come, and it was based on our real life experience of building a swimming pool in the backyard. And so he had them come and make sketches of the house. And to this day, to watch that cartoon, it's like my house, our house on the cartoon show, which is cool. So, this type, his work was his life and his passion, and we just became part of that with him. And I remember we had all the Mattel toys of Beany and Cecil, and with the copter hats and running through the neighborhood, and our swimming pool had all the characters painted around the outside. We truly grew up in a cartoon world, and it was very cool. But I wanted to say also about Time for Beany. Dad had a love for puppets from a young age. And he was pretty young when his mom helped him make a soft puppet.
12 years old.
Yeah, it was like the early version of Cecil, right?
Right.
And
Bob Clampett also designed the first Mickey Mouse toys.
Yeah.
Dolls.
Yeah.
Because he was a very smart man. He was probably always way ahead of whatever job he was in. He was always doing the next job. He saw where the business was going a lot of times.
I should also mention, because it's very appropriate to this convention, Bob was a graduate of San Diego High School. And, you know, he was one of our first guests here at Comic-Con in San Diego.
He loved it.
Yeah, and that's how I got to know Bob and his family. And I think it has to be said that you had to have seen Bob to know this, but I don't think there has ever been a cartoonist who acted more like a cartoonist than Bob. I mean, I mean, there's lots of stories about working on the production. That, of course, is everybody's under strain to try to get this stuff done. But Bob I knew liked to be outrageous. He was always laughing. He was always coming up with ideas. Nothing seemed to offend him, and I did lots of things that I thought would be offensive that he actually thought was really funny. You know, he became a really good friend, and he was really, even though he was, to us, a celebrity cartoonist, I mean, one of the greatest cartoon directors of all time, he was kind of like one of the boys. He liked hanging around with us, because we were 17, 8 years old, but it's like he had that same kind of juvenile love of life that we did. And so that's how we connected so easily.
I agree, and I think fundamentally, he was a fan. Like what he loved big, like us, we're fans. And so he just carried that passion with him. And when he first got involved in the industry, he was a little surprised how serious some of the people were. Because he thought, you come to work and you just have a great time. But I think that really clicked for him when he started working with Tex Avery. And then when he went to his own shows, he really always had that enthusiasm and wanted to have a good time, and he was amazingly fun to grow up with, I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't a job for him. He'd work nights and weekends. He loved to put in the time. He loved to work with everybody there. And that's true. A lot of the cartoonists, the older cartoonists, it was kind of just a job, like a 9-to-5 job in and out, but that was never it for him. He loved to create stories. We still have a lot of the stories that he developed, even in his earliest years when he first came to the studio, after creating the Mickey Mouse dolls. So, all that. One other thing I wanted to mention, some of you might know, but maybe many of you don't, but when Mark was talking about the Beany and Cecil restaurants, just recently, within the last few weeks, we found out that Bob Dylan did a piece of art that he's selling. It's of the Beany and Cecil restaurant.
If you came to the very early San Diego conventions, you had the joy of meeting Bob. He was not only there, he was very accessible. He would sit by the pool, and anybody could go up to him. And one of the things that struck me about it was that, you go up to him and say, Mr. Clampett, I love your work. You asked him questions about it, and he would take the time to answer your questions. Well, that's not the remarkable part, because almost anyone, if you're praising them, will give you time. But he would start asking everybody, what do you do? Are you an artist? Do you write? He'd look at their work. I was not prepared for him to be that interested in my career. And the day we lost Bob, I drove Sheldorf, who was one of the people who helped start the San Diego Con, as you know. I drove Shell from the Clampett home for the after party, whatever, the celebration at the home after the funeral. And as we were driving down, Shell turned to me and he said, we've got to start a Bob Clampett Award. Now, this was the time the Comic-Con was new enough where every time someone we knew died, we'd start an award. We had to stop that because after a few years, 10 people had died, you couldn't have 8,000 awards. But he said, what should the Bob Clampett Award be? And I said, it should be for taking an interest in helping people. Because that's what struck me about Bob, he was so interested in everybody around him. He was really interested in this new generation of fans and things like that. And that is why there's a Bob Clampett Humanitarian Award. And I think it's really appropriate. I can't think of anybody whose name is more fitting to be on that award than Bob's. So, now, obviously we're scrunching a lot of his career into 1 hour here. Most of you probably better know the Beany and Cecil cartoon show, which came about in, start with the years here, 1962. It first went on the air as Maddie's Fun Day Funnies. The Mattel toy people were sponsoring. Back then, sponsors used to control time slots. When they had the Bell Telephone Hour on, that was because Bell Telephone Company sponsored that hour regardless of what was in it. and they control time slots. And Mattel Toys controlled a half hour on Sunday on ABC television, and at first they put together a show called Maddie's Fun Day Funnies, which had old Paramount cartoons, Herman the Catnip and Buzzy the Crow and Casper and things like that. And then they decided, well, we need something new. And Bob had been working on the idea of bringing back Beany and Cecil in animation. Do you want to talk about where he took from there?
Well, animation was in and puppets were out, so he saw it as a possibility to bring Beany and Cecil to animation like Hanna-Barbera was doing with animation. And so that was the origin of it. This clip we're actually going to show Beany Land, but it opens with a bumper, so you get to see a little bit of Wild Man of Wildsville, Go Man Man Go, and then the cartoon Beany Land, which was a parody of the Disneyland Park. One of the three films that he did parodying Disney because he loved Disney's movies so much.
Can we cut up this audio someplace else here? It's up as far as we go on the computer. Tech people? Is there anybody here who knows how to work this?
Last time I put the mic at the computer speaker.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Well,
Well, it's coming out of here though.
well, then it's all going into here probably. This is the audio. Oh, let's see. Just play this for a second. See what happens. Play your stuff here. Keep it. I'm going to start this over.
How do you like this crazy picture? Harmless, harmless. I like it, I like it, I like it. But I like this one better. Crazy. Let's blast off with Beany and the crew. Cecil the Turkey, serpent and Uncle Captain too. We're out to launch our rocket to the moon. And now here's Beany and Cecil about Clampett cartoon. Beany Land. I christen thee the Duncanockin' Rocket. Well, back to the old drawing board.
Gee, Cease, where did Uncle Captain get this neat new rocket?
At the rocket market. Where else would you get a rocket, boy? All set, man?
All set, Uncle Captain.
Prepare to blast off. Off we go into the wire blue orbit. Just think, I'll be the first man on the moon.
That's what he thinks.
Men, moon dead ahead. And now to be the first man on the moon. And Cecil, throw out the anchor. Aye, sir. First man on the moon. Green cheese. I'll package it and make millions. And now my plan to make Designer's John's own dismal land. With unpaid help, I'll build a cheese factory. Grab all the cheese, package it, and ship it to that cotton-picking earth. Deplete the moon and be rich, rich, rich. Bring the plans, Beany boy. I, Captain Huff and Buff, pronounce the moon Beany Land, the happiest land outside the earth. Beany boy, we'll subdivide it.
And then the day after Tomorrowland, and a fantastic land, and a crazy junior train, and a caterpillar mountain, and a slipping beauty castle, and a darn old duck pond.
Well, let's get to work. One for you, and one for me. One for you, and two for me.
Now hold it. You don't have to do all that work. Just make a wish and your dreams will come true in this gay and carefree kingdom.
Alrighty. Oh, when I wish upon a moon. Oh, I want Beany Land here soon.
Let me try mine. I think it's faster. When I dream upon a lunar, I want Beany Land here sooner.
What's that? Well, I'll be. Look what the clods have done to my dismal land. You did it, Beany Boy. You did it.
And look, here comes our gay, carefree customers.
Try and select on there.
You did it, Beany Boy.
HDMI1
You
instead of
did
audio.
it.
And look, here comes our gay, carefree customers.
Yeah, on the controller there. Instead of leaving out auto, put it on HDMI1 so it stays there.
This is why Comic Fest is so much like the early comic.
Is there a source selection on there?
No, it'd be on the projector.
Not on the projector's remote control?
That might work.
We don't have a remote control for the projector. Well, it's on, let's.
They do look extremely happy, but aren't they nice?
This place wasn't built by a mouse. It was built for mice.
Big rat.
Cecil,
I'm gonna ride over Fantastic Land on that dumb elephant with the big ears.
and I'm gonna ride on the submarine Nautilus.
Scale a Mad Hatter Award.
This is fun. This is fun. I've seen a house fly, and I've seen a horse fly, but I ain't ever seen an elephant fly. What the darn
Cecil, stop, look, listen.
I bet a kick in the cow catcher.
I made it. I made it. How can I top this?
Oh boy, 20,000 leagues under the sea.
Bottom up, bottom two. Now it's 20,000 leagues
Under the sea.
Hurry, Cecil, he's wrecking our terribly happy magic kingdom.
I'm coming! I'm coming! They hate me! They hate me! They hate me!
Oh no, I wish I may, I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight.
Yeah, like getting rid of that old dishonest John.
Cecil, look, it worked.
Yeah, you're sure a good wisher, Beany Boy.
Watch my wish with my Hufflepuff dust.
Gosh, Beany Land's all back to normal.
Yeah. So remember, kids, anytime you want to see Beany Land absolutely free,
Just look up in the sky, any moonlit night.
yeah, and we'll be seeing you. Oh, when you look up at the
As you can see, a pretty hip cartoon show for its time. And there's another thing about Bobby, he loved puns. He came out of them a lot.
May I point out one thing, though? I love this show so much that I drove my parents just this close to killing me. There was about 2 years where no matter what happened, all I had to say was, "Nya-ah-ah." Every kid I knew was going, "Nya-ah-ah." I mean, it was no accident that Dishonest John got as many toys practically as Beany and Cecil, because he was, I mean, Dick Dastardly was a rip-off of him. I mean, Hanna-Barbera had a lot of characters. Scary Harry Safari, they were all rip-offs of DJ.
Well, you can imagine for us in the schoolyard, Bob Clampett cartoon, I can hear that.
Yeah, but how smart was he to put his name in the theme song?
Oh, yeah.
That was Mom's idea.
Typical.
So he was always looking out for him. One funny thing about the advice Beany and Cecil give at the end of the cartoon, Dad saved a lot of stuff, and he saved fan letters. And I came across one last year where a girl was very upset because every night she went out and made a wish and nothing happened. Like, you know, and I thought maybe they should think twice before they put that in a cartoon. You just have to go outside and wish upon a star.
And Dad also toyed with the idea of creating a Beany Land. And there were a couple different locations, but one of them was at what earlier was POP. So.
Yeah, it was in the later days when the money was running out. We just got the rights from the book that reproduced the little map over, it looked like a photostat of the background there that had Bob's notes on it. But it's too bad, because that would have been a perfect fit in its heyday.
For the whole park on POP too.
This is interesting, I did not know this, because it said here, your father wanted to rebuild Pacific Ocean Park, the amusement park. My father was the Internal Revenue Agent who closed it. My father foreclosed on Pacific Ocean Park and closed the place. So.
One of my greatest favorite memories was there was a pool in the backyard that we had put in. It was like a bathtub, a Jack LaLanne pool. And I was kind of afraid. I was really little and I was afraid of getting in the pool. And Mom and Dad said to me, if you go from one end of the pool down to the other, Dad will take you to POP. And I got across that pool, and that was one of my favorite experiences, just me one-on-one with him at POP on all the rides.
Amazing man. The cartoon you just saw, the Freeburg and Butler left the puppet show at some point, and the voices you heard in there, Beany and the Captain were done by Jim McGeorge, and a man named Irv Schumacher did the voicing of Cecil and Dishonest John. And they had a lot of other fun voice people off and on in the show, here and there. Lord Buckley.
Lord Buckley was Go Man Van Gogh.
Yeah,
He didn't do it on that bumper, though. He had passed on by then. The bumper was done later, and Scatman Carruthers did that.
Yeah, and I remember watching that show, and you can kind of, sometimes with a cartoon show, you connect with the people doing it. You go, really funny people made this. I feel like a kinship to them. And then I met Bob in person, I realized that he had that just great sense of humor. Scott was talking about making him annoyed and things like that. One night at the old El Cortez Hotel, this is the place to talk stories about the early days of San Diego. They ran, Scott, I don't know if you were involved with this, they ran the movie Beyond the Valley of the Dollar.
Oh, I was involved with that. Yeah, I was one of those guys behind it.
So I was sitting with Bob, they ran this Russ Meyer movie, and I sat there, and Bob kept whispering questions to me, so I was sitting there going, she's doing that because she's a lesbian. No, he's a transvestite. They're into bondage. They're just explaining this stuff to him. And in the middle of the movie, you remember this stuff that happened in the middle of the film? The fire alarms went off at the El Cortez so loud they had to stop the movie. They never showed the end of it that night. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, everybody's in their pajamas, walking around the El Cortez, and Bob and I were standing out by the pool, just watching. It was a much better show than the end of the movie.
We wanted to come up with a way that we could pay for our room at the El Cortez. So a friend of ours had at the Academy Theater here in San Diego, they were showing it. So he just brought down a 60mm print and we showed it. And I was working for the city schools and I got all these corny anti-drug educational things. And we had like a weirdo show and charged everybody $1 a piece and paid for our rooms. And attracted Bob.
Yeah, Bob stayed up all night with us watching this movie.
And Theodore Sturgeon was there too. He complained that it was like 4 a.m. He goes, how come there's no more stuff? He was on.
Yeah, so, just a really neat guy,
One of us.
yeah, that's right, we connected with him and such. I know you keep getting asked what it was like to grow up in that house, and you told us a little bit about that. But at what age were you, Rob, when you figured out what your father did for a living?
Oh, real early, because doing the voice on Beany and Cecil, the first one I did was Buffalo Billy, and I was real small when I did that. And I remember being in the voice booth with him.
Did you get paid?
I never saw the check. Yeah, that's one thing. But the other thing was that the pilot for Beany and Cecil, I kind of remember that. That was done, before they ever had the series. And he didn't have a studio to do it in. When Ruth referred to, production being done at the house, my bedroom was the animators' room. So when I woke up in the morning, a bunch of guys came in and sat down at the desks all around my room. And that was one of my first memories.
I guess so. That's wild.
Really?
I never knew that. Was that pilot the three-headed three-corn?
No, that was Beany and Cecil meet Billy the Squid or something.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that.
And Ruth, when did you figure out what he did for a living? And did you understand that wasn't normal?
I didn't for a long time, and so that's what was so fun when I finally realized it, because I'm like, this is so cool. And I remember one thing that was very vivid to me was, I can't remember how, maybe I was 8 or 9. He decided that it'd be fun because he had saved all the time for Beanie puppets. because he saved everything. And so matter of fact, I found in the file where he'd done a sketch of this idea for like the Clampett family puppet show. And I don't know what specifically inspired that, but the next thing you know, Sherry, my sister and I have gold lame little dresses, and Mom has the dress, and you have the vest. And we've all got the puppets, and he wasn't in the show, but he directed it. So we would go to the studio. They had a little building where they, once they had the cartoon series going, it was right off Melrose Avenue near Highland. We'd go over and practice, and then we would go do these events and do puppet shows, and
Well, he did pay us for that, too.
yeah.
He made a deal with us, and he said, you have to come and rehearse every day for like 3 months.
Yeah.
That you do that, you're gonna get paid well. And it started out at a club out in Palm Springs or Palm Desert. And I was reminded of it today because there's a guy walking around as Alvin and the Chipmunks. And the first appearance of Alvin and the Chipmunks were as puppets on the Ed Sullivan Show. That were Dad's puppets. Ross Bagdasarian borrowed for that. Actually, the crew came and did the puppets, the Bob Clampett puppet crew at the time. So it was fun to think about that because that was part of the show. We had Beany and Cecil in the show, and Clowny, and the Chipmunks, and
Great
Willie the
music,
Wolf, and
yeah.
all these musical numbers and comedy, and it was great fun doing that.
Yeah, it was really fun.
The Alvin cartoon came out in '62 as well, and in my mind, that was the other really hip cartoon show.
Yeah. And they've always been really great with us when we were doing the DVD on Dad's career. They were happy to have us include photos and
material.
But he had really more ideas than he could have ever had time for in his life. So, I mean, you know, we got to at home hear about all these other ideas that never got made, but he just had an incredible imagination.
Didn't he have like 4 different puppet series at once at one time?
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, Buffalo Billy and Thunderbolt the Wonderful.
Thunderbolt.
And the Willie the
And
Wolf
Willie the
show.
Wolf, yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It was, I mean, it was wild, and one
We're done with it. Thanks.
one thing I always thought was really cool, because this was kind of his nature, he loved to go to the phone tree or whatever, where after the shows, people would call in and all excited about what they liked, and, you know, and they would talk to operators. He would go and sit down and talk to people and get the feedback directly. Just like he did in the Looney Tunes cartoons, he would go to the theater and sit in the front row and then turn around and watch what people reacted to when they were watching the cartoon. So that was really important to him, to see what sparked, you know, because a lot of times it's unpredictable what people really reacted to, but I love that he did that.
But the puppet show on television was more immediate, you know, in terms of getting reactions. And so, you know, that to him was so great, doing this live every day, 5 days a week. And at one point, they actually had a Saturday show as well. And the guys that worked there really didn't like that very much, because they had to go back and do another half hour that was then syndicated around the country. But that was great for him to see and get reactions all the time from people.
Yeah, they worked so hard. I mean, and I think another thing he loved is he could learn about something in the news, you know, one day and have it be in the show.
Right.
And so I think that was really exciting for him, because it was just so immediate, where animation, as much as he loved it, it's a long process of production.
And once you finished it, you're stuck with it. It's not like you're gonna have a new one tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
In one show, they had a real funny bit where Cecil, you know, was in love with Cecilia, and he got kind of lost in it, and he started taking bites out of the boat. And the Leek and Lena kind of fell apart. And after the show, all the guys that worked on the show thought it was a hilarious bit, worked really well. And after the show, Dad started taking phone calls, and there was people calling in and saying, "What did you do? You know, they're home. It's home." And so he realized there was a bigger responsibility there. And so the next night, the first thing in the show, Cecil put the whole boat back together.
Does anyone have any questions here? Yes, sir.
Beany Land seemed to be a tribute to Disney, but Disney is such a big obsession with their brands. Didn't they object to it?
No, didn't get any objection from them at all. And Dad knew Walt Disney. In fact, I was thinking about this just the other day, that in the 50s, Disney invited him over to his house and walked him into the backyard, and Dad, that was his first view of Disneyland. He saw the scale model of it. But he knew Disney from like 30, 31, when he came up with the idea for the doll. So there was no problem from Disney, but the interesting thing was ABC. We have actually the censor notes, and they said, "You got to take out that Walt Disney villain character."
That's because Walt was running around going, yeah. It works.
Well, also I wanted to mention that Walt had offered Dad a job, or Dad went to Walt after the doll thing and showed him his portfolio, and Walt said he'd hire him to be on the team at Disney, but they were moving studios and he'd have to wait a couple of months, and he was so jazzed by that he went and talked to Leon Schlesinger and ended up at Warner Brothers. It was just that twist of fate, but yeah.
And he happened to know Leon Schlesinger because when he was 12 years old, he did a film, and Leon was the head of Pacific Art and Title. Dad went over to Pacific Art and Title and said, "I want you to do a title, professional titles for me." And Schlesinger did. When he came to pick him up, he says, "How much do I owe you?" And Schlesinger says, "It's on the house, kid." And so when he came back in, he remembered that kid, you know, 5 years later. And so that's how he ended up at what became Warner Brothers.
John, you have a question?
Yeah, I had the distinct pleasure of meeting both your dad and your mom. And, your dad was wonderful to me, and your mom was great.
Are you aware of the fact that Beany and Cecil, the puppet versions, did a promotional short for theatrical exhibitors, introducing 3D to them? And that short has been restored and is available now on Blu-ray 3D. I've got it.
Oh, wow.
And it's pristine. I mean, if you ever want to see what the puppets look like in